Okay, so this is August the 13th, 2017. We're in New York City. We call this Miracles in Manhattan. This is available both to those who can come and enjoy sitting in the class, and also it's going out live stream. And as you know, it's available on YouTube. So at the moment, we're going over the 50 Miracles Principles of the Course. I did the 50 Miracles Principles in June of 2013, so that was a while ago. But it was not done professionally in terms of the camera, and we didn't get through all. We only got up to 38. I only had one session on it, and it wasn't a really high-quality production. So I decided to do it over and to spend more time on each one of the principles. Now, at the same time that that's true, we've been talking about some other things along the way besides the 50 Miracles Principles. So at this point, we're up to lesson 14. I mean, not lesson 14, principle 14. And today, I hope to get up into the 30s and then finish it off in September through the 50, after which I'm thinking about doing a session or several sessions. We'll go slowly through the psychotherapy pamphlet of the Course in Miracles. We've never done that here before, okay? But to interrupt myself, there's something I thought I would like to talk about for 10 or 15 minutes. I hope it's not much more than that, on the nature of reality before we start getting into, where am I going here, okay? And by the way, when I talk about this nature of reality, I would just like for you to keep in mind politics. Now, the Course is apolitical. It has nothing to do with politics, and I'm not going to be talking about politics from the standpoint of any individual. We're just talking about politics in terms of the way the mind works and the way human relationships work and how things have been put together in this world, because in terms of the Course in Miracles, it's really as though we have it all upside down and backwards. And nobody knows it, or nobody sees it. It's kind of like an Alice in Wonderland world that we're in, and there's a sense that things aren't right. You know, that it shouldn't be this way, or it doesn't work this way. But seeing how it's like a mirror image, it's completely upside down and backwards, we don't get it, even though we feel it's that way. So this opening piece, this is from chapter 18, and it says, "You may be surprised to hear how very different reality is from what you see. You do not realize the magnitude of that one error." I'll talk about that one error in a minute, what that one error is. "It was so vast and so completely incredible that from it a world of total unreality had to emerge. What else could come of it?" So let's talk about that one error. So the one error is where everything got flipped around backwards. And we could see that one error as, well, we could call it the Big Bang, right? And there's a section in the Course where, let me see if let's go on to this next section here. Some of you are probably very familiar with this. It says, Well, I'm trying to run both at once here. This isn't working. Okay. I've got to look up here. Into eternity. This is interestingly enough, this is in chapter 27, and there are 31 chapters. So it's very near the end of the course that we find this. Right? It's hinting at this a lot, but we don't actually find this statement till 4 chapters from the end of the book. Into eternity, where all was one, there crept a tiny, mad idea at which the Son of God, now the Son of God, that's you, and that's everyone, okay, at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. So we should have laughed at this silly, ridiculous idea. Now the silly, ridiculous idea is that it's possible to think a thought outside of the mind of God. It is not possible to think a thought outside of the mind of God. But it looks like it is. And because it looks like it is, because we wished for that to be true, and it seems to have come true. This is why it's very Alice in Wonderland-like situation, right? So, going on with that. In his forgetting, did the thought become a serious idea and possible of both accomplishment and real effects. Together we can laugh them both away and understand that time cannot intrude upon eternity. And then, of course, goes so far as to say, it is a joke. I like it. It's a joke to think that time can circumvent eternity, which means there is no time. So now let's talk about a couple of things that look very real, which do not exist. Number one, you. Now, when I say you, there's dimensions of you. The first dimension of you that does not exist is your body, because bodies are just incredibly ephemeral. Shakespeare's got it right with out, brief candle, life support player that struts and frets its hour upon the stage. A tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury signifying nothing. And it does insofar as it's just a dream or it's a story. So once upon a time, a couple hundred years ago, there's somebody who was your great-great-great-great-grandfather. And you probably have no idea who that person was, other than maybe there's a name on a family tree somewhere. But you know nothing about that. By the way, John Mundy was the Lord Mayor of London in the 1520s, in case anybody's interested.
No politics.
Oh, no politics, right. I don't think there's any relationship. Could be. So the body is obviously ephemeral. It obviously disappears, right? But there's more that's not real than that. There's also you're not real in the sense of name, identity, personality, all that stuff that we think is who we are. So the truth of the matter is that there is a you that you are. There is a self that you are. That's the self which is also the Son of God. That self is eternal. That self can't help being eternal. That self always has been, always will be, and there's no avoiding it. It's as though, in a way, that self, although it's not exactly true, is sleeping and having a dream. And in this dream, you're dreaming that the folks in the room, most of you live in New York or New Jersey or somewhere nearby, and you have certain kinds of occupations and relationships, etc. But at some point, as we all know, that will all again disappear. Right? The other thing which is not real not even for a moment, is this thing here. Look at this sentence here. There is no time. So time is a non-reality. The body is a non-reality. In fact, it's not only the body a non-reality, the whole world is a non-reality. One of the ways that the Course expresses this, it says there's nothing outside of you. So we're think about it in terms of that which is external. So there's nothing outside of you. What that means is that there's nothing outside of your mind. Or as Jesus says it in the Gospels, the kingdom of heaven is inside you. So reality is the kingdom of heaven. That's what's eternal. That's what lasts forever. And everything else is fleeting, disappearing. It does not last. There is no eternity in it. There is eternity in the eternal self that you are. And so you can sort of imagine that really kind of what happens to each of us that the Course is really trying to do. The Course is trying to help us to wake up, right? To see it. And that's what we talk about like enlightenment or an awakening experience. Somebody who has an awakening experience, which is really something more than your ordinary mystical experiences. I mean, there's mystical experiences and there's mystical experiences. I mean, there's mystical experiences being one with nature. That's very nice. Or being in love. That's very nice. I mean, there's mystical experience, but then there's others that are so completely knocked down, drag out that you see what I'm talking about. You get it. You get the non-reality of everything that you're seeing in the what we might think of as the sort of this the ordinary world, right? So, all right, let's go on to the next one. But nothing you have ever seen begins to show the enormity of that original error, which seemed to cast you out of heaven, to shatter knowledge into meaningless bits of disunited perception, and to force you to make further substitutions. So the Course draws an interesting distinction between knowledge and perception. So perception is what happens with our senses. Perception is what we see, and therefore also, logically in a certain sense, think is real, because it appears to be out there. There's another thing the Course calls knowledge, which transcends perception completely. There is a thing called true perception. And true perception means that when you get to true perception, you're on the doorstep of knowledge. I mean, you're that close. You knock, and you might gain entrance, right? So we would think of a Jesus or an enlightened master, excuse me, as someone who has attained knowledge, who's awake, literally awakened in that sense, who knows, who sees the whole game, who sees the whole play, and has made a simple choice, and that is that they're not playing. They're not going to play the game. They're not going to get caught in politics. They're not going to get caught in one-upmanship. They're not going to get caught in power games. They're not going to get caught in hurtful games with other people. It's just not going to happen because they see that those are ego games. All right? All right. And let's go just a little. I've got just a few more of these. So that was the first projection of error outward. The world arose to hide it and became the screen on which it was projected. and drawn between you and the truth, for truth extends inward. This is where everything always gets turned around backward. Heaven is inside you, the truth is inside you, the mind is what's reality, and the mind is inside you. You can't help but partake of the mind, right? Where the idea of loss is meaningless and only increase is conceivable. This hints at something that I'm not going to go into right now, but it would be really fun to talk about, and we will at another point, and go into some depth on, which is a basic law of the universe. The Course talks about different kinds of laws, right? There's the laws of God, the laws of the universe, there's laws of the ego. A typical law of the ego, in the most barren sense, is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's an ego law. You hit me, I hit you. You insult me, I insult you. That's an ego's law. So there's another law which is similar to this, which is what goes around comes around. That's true, but as you give, so do you receive. As you forgive, so are you forgiven. Right? This principle really does work. Of course, I call it is a basic law of the universe. Right? Back to this. Do you really think it's strange that a world in which everything is backwards and upside down arose from this projection of error? It was inevitable. So this is where we get defensiveness. This is where we get anger. This is where we get insulting each other, where nations start throwing insults back and forth at each other. You know, if you throw your nuclear arm at me, I'm just going to throw my nuclear arm at you, and I've got a bigger nuclear arm than your nuclear arm, and I can mash you into smithereens, and that's a law of the ego, and that works in a certain very negative sense. And the world has known a lot about that law. We've experienced that over and over and over again, and to no one's benefit. Right? Let's go on. For truth brought to this could only remain within quiet and take no part all the mad projections by which this world was made. So truth takes no part in this. Truth just sort of sits quietly by and doesn't play either side because there isn't a side to play. Right? Call it not sin but madness. Now the Course talks a lot about something it calls reason or reasonableness or sanity. By the way, how many are you in here, how many work in therapy? Look at that. Yeah, we got 5, 6 people are therapists, right? So, I mean, obviously part of why you're here is that you're interested in helping to heal the mind and helping to heal you. And this is the great need. The great need is to heal the mind. But in order to do it, it requires that we do this complete reversal in thinking and really learn to think another way, to think without projection, to stop all anger, all attack thoughts. It's not easy to do because the place you have to stop it first is inside you. Right? Of course, it's very clear on that. Right? It's to stop the terrorist within. The word terrorist has the word error in it, and it's the terrorist within. And that really requires noticing your willingness to be a terrorist. I don't mean in going around blowing up bombs, but blowing up, getting angry. You know, blowing up in that sense, just with your attack thoughts. Both internal and external. I mean, both in terms of with someone and just smoldering. You know, So call it not sin but madness, for such it was, and so it still remains. Invest it not with guilt, for guilt implies it was accomplished in reality. That is a very important phrase, and we could spend a lot of time going over that phrase. The Course has a lot to say about guilt. It's a basic part of our problem. Invest it not with guilt. So what we like to do is say, you are the guilty party, not me. You're the guilty party. You started this. You created the first error. You just made me get angry. One of the silliest things you could possibly say is, look what you made me do now. Right? Okay. And above all, be not afraid of it. So let's go on. So our most basic problem is that we perceive the dream we see in front of us as reality. It's very hard for us not to think that what is on the news constitutes reality, because it's on the news. It's there in front of you on big screen TV, right? And it's saying, this is what's really happening out there. I often advise people don't watch the news, but there's something very seductive about it, isn't there, right? Heaven seems like a fantasy. Truth is, heaven is reality. And what we see in the world is the dream. Okay? Now, sometimes you say, don't take it too literal and think the sense of thinking that you made up the flowers and the trees and the rivers and the oceans. I mean, there's a certain sense of what that's true, but just the first place is just think of, we made up the society that we live in. We made up that world. Okay, we made up fashion and culture and all of those parts of the world. Look at it, there's where you want to look first.
A good way to say that is we made up the world in accordance to our own interpretations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. So, we need a microphone over here. Absolutely need a mic. By the way, you can't talk without a mic. Hi.
I just have to ask a question. Okay, we made up this reality, but I feel like we're so close to nature that we extended ourselves with nature. Is that our creations? Is that called our creations?
You could think of it there. Keep in mind, nature is not nice.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're not. We extend ourselves.
I mean,
Like,
nature is pretty, but I mean, when I say it's not nice, I just mean that animals live by killing other animals, that tree roots are seeking to push out other roots, and that, you know, we live off of things. Pardon?
The world is a constant
It's
war.
a constant war.
Yeah, we don't
Insects
see it.
are at war, you know.
so it's all inclusive.
It's all inclusive.
It's
in
all
that sense.
inclusive. We're
Right.
crazy and the world's crazy. Yeah, I know.
Sunsets
yeah.
are beautiful. Stream.
But our
Yeah.
real selves are the sane ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So each of us speaks of and therefore confirms the world we see by speaking of it. The more we describe it, the more convinced we are in its reality. So let's say that you have a complaint about something, right? So you complain. And the more you complain, the more real it becomes. So we're talking about the nature of reality. So we make it real, and then we underline the fact that it's real, and we keep underlining the fact that it's real, and that, you know, we highlight it and put in yellow and etc. So what would you like to see, heaven or hell? It's a choice. Everything is one of the most basic points in the Course is that everything, this is a major emphasis of Dr. Ken Wapnick in his teachings. You begin to become very clear of when his major emphases were And this was one of them. Everything is a choice. Within this world, the ego rules, and cruelly. Whenever it's in quotes or in italics, it's from the Course. What's not in quotes is from me, okay? So this kingdom is the world. The ego has always been in charge in this world, and cruelly. I thought it was Arnold Toynbee, a 19th century British historian, says history's one damn thing after another. What Toynbee didn't know is he said that, and what happened after Toynbee? World War I, followed by World War II. Talk about one damn thing followed by a depression, but depression in between, rather, right? So it is just one damn thing after the other. Toynbee's not the only one that said that, by the way. So all who believe in separation have a basic fear of retaliation and abandonment. They believe in attack and rejection, and so that is what they perceive and teach and learn. These insane ideas are clearly the result of dissociation. So you psychologists will understand dissociation means that it's a kind of separation where we disengage, right, from the way we see things. And projection, which is blaming someone else. So what you teach, you are, but it's quite apparent that you can teach wrongly and can therefore teach yourself wrongly. That's a very important point, that what you teach, you are. So it's a really good idea to be thinking what it is you're teaching all the time, in every relationship, every single encounter with another human being. Yes. Sandra.
Yes, I'd just like to say this. Perhaps you can help me. Growing up, I thought that it was awful that everything ate everything else. And then I had another understanding that we're, in the essence, we are all one. So whatever we eat, we become that energy. And in the Gurdjieff tradition, we are, human beings are also eaten in another realm by angelic or demons. So I don't quite see nature, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding something.
No.
Everything eats everything else, and that's our oneness.
Right.
So while you said the trees are strangling that,
Right.
it's a metamorphosis, like the butterfly. So I don't look at nature as suffocating each other. I'm looking at it as somehow the contraction, even in suffocation, brings an expansion. Does anyone understand what I'm saying?
Of course.
And so I don't see it that way anymore, but as a little girl, I really thought it was a horrible world of dogs and everybody fighting.
Dog.
But in that sense, it's kind of beautiful.
Sure. Actually, Ken Womack used to make fun of vegetarians.
Yes.
Because they were killing carrots and and what other vegetables there are that can be killed out there in the process. You could look at it as a part of the natural body. You want to take the mic back down to Chris?
If we give all the meaning to anything that we see, then I think even though nature is constantly changing and dying, still we can recognize we can use what we see to remember something eternal or some beauty, but just it's not in the changing, dying thing. It's in our mind. We're just using it to remind ourselves. So in that sense, we can have beautiful and mystical experiences.
Sure.
With nature as an aid, right?
Right.
But it's
of course.
It's not in that thing.
That's right. Not in the thing. Very good.
Let me add one more point.
All right.
It's very crucial in regards to what you were pointing out. It's very important to look at these things. You were mentioning that when they eat each other, they become one. The Course would say, there's a very, really crucial teaching in the Course that says, love does not kill to save. So you could say one plant does not kill or consume another one to join with it. You can look out and look at things lovingly in accordance with the Holy Spirit and perceive it without conflict, but in truth, it's still a world of attack. To kill something, for one thing to kill something is not joining. Does that make sense? Love, the love in anything does not kill something else to join with it or to be saved.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I think, the times I find peace within myself is a park with like the leaves and the
Oh,
birds
sure.
singing and the smell. I feel like I'm one with nature, but also we're one with the bad part of nature too, because this is the dream. This is the whole dream. So when I could look at the good part of who I am, when I could touch that good part and realize that everything is a part of me, even the bad parts,
Mm-hmm.
but
I wouldn't think of it
yeah.
necessarily as a bad part.
well,
Right.
you know what, and
I grew
yeah.
up on a farm in Missouri during the 40s and 50s. My mom thought that it was just perfectly natural that we raise things that got butchered and eaten, right? And no, not as something was bad, right? All right, let's finish.
Could I
this.
just say one more thing?
All right.
The Native Americans, when they kill, they do it with respect.
Right.
They become one with what they slaughter.
Right.
So it's just the crazy ego that
Right.
ruins everything.
I know in some of the Indian traditions, there's a thing about asking permission of the rabbit or whatever before you take the rabbit, right?
When
Remember-
when I see a water bug in my apartment, I apologize, but I kill it.
But,
Very
but,
good,
but,
Hon.
but be clear on something. You don't become one with something by killing it.
Right.
That's impossible. That's the insanity of the ego mind.
Right.
We need to be very clear on that.
Because it's not a physical thing. It's not devouring something that enables you to become one with the thing.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
It's the
Okay.
mind seeing things correctly.
I had a funny experience just recently. I was called up a friend on the phone, and I said, "How you doing?" He says, "Well, I have this little problem. I just caught a mouse in my house, and I can't kill it, but I can't let it stay in my house." Right. So he was going to try to drive it someplace and let it go. Take it out to the cemetery and let it.
But a water bug, I wouldn't drive anywhere.
Right. I understand. I decided a long time ago that insects and mice were something that was, I wouldn't feel bad about. Okay. Now let's go on. Okay. Just a couple more on these, and then we'll quit. So as I was just saying, oops. Well, I see why I didn't do it. Here. There's a problem right there. And just one more for fun. Okay, that took half an hour or more. Now we're going to go back to the 50 Miracles principles, okay? All right, so up to 14. We're going to do another half hour and then we'll take a break at quarter of, okay? If you need to break yourself in the meantime, just do it. So, principle number 14, miracles bear witness to truth. They are convincing because they arrive from conviction. Without conviction, they deteriorate into magic, which is mindless and therefore destructive, or rather the uncreative use of mind. So magic, in terms of A Course in Miracles, is an attempt to solve a problem Sorry, I didn't do that. Oh, I get the left hand, right hand, think. Okay. I'll reread this. Miracles bear witness to truth. They are convincing because they arise from conviction. Without conviction, they deteriorate into magic, which is mindless and therefore destructive, or rather the uncreative use of mind. Magic is an attempt to solve a problem where it is not. The uncreative use of mind says the problem is in the world and needs to be fixed in the world. The problem is never in the world, it's always in the mind. It's always the mind which needs to be fixed. Right? From that standpoint, for example, the Course also says, and we talked about this last time, all sickness is of the mind, right? Cancer is of the mind, and a headache is of the mind. The solution is in the mind, either way. It doesn't mean you don't use mechanisms like taking an aspirin or doing something about cancer, all right? Because you believe, first of all, you believe that's true, that'll help. And in the physical sense, that helps so that you do that. Doesn't mean you don't do it, just it's still what brought it on and what cures it. I had cancer, I did chemotherapy, I believed it would work, it worked. And I also believed it wasn't going to get me. And it obviously didn't get me. That was a long time ago. Let's go on. So one of the problems with religion is the use of magic or ritual. Jesus in the Course thus says, I do not want to share my body in communion because this is to share nothing. Would I try to share an illusion with the most holy child of a most holy Father? Yet I do want to share my mind with you because we are of one mind, and that mind is ours. See only this mind everywhere, because only this is everywhere and everything. It is everything because it encompasses all things within itself. Blessed are you who perceive only this, because you perceive only what is true. So all the ritual, all the rites and stuff that goes on within the context of any religious tradition, in that sense, is magic, right? It doesn't change them. If it doesn't change your mind, nothing is changing, right? Only the mind can change. When the mind changes, then that changes things. We'll go to 15. Each day should be devoted to miracles. The purpose of time is to enable you to learn how to use time constructively. So let's keep in mind that Course talks about 4 learning devices. One is the body. What the body is it's a learning device. It's temporal, but it's a learning device. Used correctly, we use the body in order to learn. Time is a learning device. So you're in a school. This world is a school, and in time, what are we doing right now? We call this a class. You know, we're sitting in a class, learning about these ideas, which helps us to see things, hopefully helps us, to see things better. The Course consists of a textbook and a workbook in which we're trying to learn something. There are 2 other learning devices in the Course. One is a miracle itself. A miracle is a learning device because if you can see that a miracle occurs, then you realize that there's a truth in the miracle. The other is a holy instant. And a holy instant is just one of these moments or one of these instances when you get this, when you see it, when it all makes sense to you. And the idea is to be able to have extended holy instances, you know, where you not only see it for a moment, but you see it for a longer moment and a longer moment. You know, and you can hold it for a longer period of time. So it is a teaching device and a means to an end. Time will cease when it no longer is useful in facilitating learning, at which point we get to experience eternity. So as I said, the world's a school, to the ego it's sometimes a pleasure palace and sometimes a prison. We're here to learn a lesson. We need therefore to be used time constructively. In fact, if you're not using your time in this world in order to learn, to facilitate this process, again, you feel like something is missing. There's kind of a waste. You're kind of wasting your time, right? I mean, you don't have to accomplish something great within the context of the world. You don't need to earn a lot of money or anything like that, but you do need to be using the time as a mechanism for waking up. Otherwise, what happens is that you're sleeping. You're continuing to sleep through life. And sleeping through life is not very exciting because there's a part of you that knows you're sleeping through life. Yes, so you need a mic, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it's a law. It's an unbreakable law. Actually, the truth is you won't be on film if you don't get this. Go ahead.
At this point, I think I would be hard put to define exactly what you mean by miracle other than awakening. Each day should be devoted to miracle. Each day should be devoted to awakenings.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Technically, in terms of the Course in Miracles, what a miracle is, it's a change of mind. Okay? So it's a change of mind by which we begin to awaken, or we begin to see this. Forgiveness is a very good example of a miracle, because what we're doing is we're seeing a situation differently. A situation where we would have held on to a grudge with a brother, we're just letting it go. And that's a miracle because you feel better because, actually, essentially you feel better because you're not holding on to it anymore.
So in a way, you're saying that the fundament always seems to be love. Yes?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good, of course. Yeah, that's central. Okay. So let's go on. So as long as we're in this school, which we call life, we might as well be learning the lessons that we came here to learn. And ultimately, in relationship to what you were just saying, the lesson is about forgiveness, which really just means letting it go or not creating a problem in the first place, not seeing a problem in the first place, even though there may be, quote, grounds for a problem, right? So forgiving everyone for everything we think is wrong in the world. First, we start by forgiving ourselves for having created the problem in the first place, the world in the first place. And every second we can choose which way we want to go here. All right. So every single second, we're choosing one of the two. We're either choosing, what happened? Oh, try to do two of these at once. Let's go to 16. How about we go to 16? This is in keeping with what we're just talking about anyhow. So miracles are teaching devices for demonstrating it's as blessed to give as to receive. We talked about that earlier. They simultaneously increase strength of the giver and supply strength to the receiver. That's the interesting part of this law is as you give, so do you receive, is that both benefit. The Course talks about this in terms of abundance. You experience more abundance, not necessarily in physical way, but one way certainly would be in terms of the heart. one, it just abundance of being alive, of being involved in a positive sense with the world. So this principle goes back to principle number 9. Miracles are a kind of exchange. And also lesson 8 from the Course is to give and to receive are one in truth. As I said, someday we'll spend more time on that one. Okay. This is just Jesus saying, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. Another way that you could use the word abundant would be that you might be more awake in your life, right? More clarity in your life, more sense of presence in the world. The Holy Spirit comes to everyone as he came to Jesus in historic time. I think this happened during the 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, during this deep searching process that has to go on in order to really wake up. It didn't come quickly, right? Jesus in the Course says that is what I mean when I said it's possible even in this world to listen to one voice. This is a very important part of the Course. And it's going to go over it and over and over it again. There's only one voice. The voice of the ego is not reality. It's an illusory voice. It's offering you discouragement rather than encouragement. So you really don't want to be paying attention to it. If you're part of God and the sonship is one, you cannot be limited to the self the ego sees. Okay? 17. Miracles transcend the body. They are sudden shifts into invisibility away from the bodily level. That is why they heal. Miracles transcend the body because the body's not who we are. And a miracle in that sense is invisible. It's also something that can happen instantaneously. It doesn't need time in order to work. In time, in the body, let's say, if I cut myself, in time, it takes time for that to heal, right? But there are other times when it wouldn't take any time, not necessarily in this sense, but in another sense. Psychologically, for example, it wouldn't take any time at all to heal a mind. Could even have a physical implication as far as that healing could occur very quickly if the mind was healed. And we'll go on. We did that one. So, we'll go to 18. A miracle is a service. It is a maximal service you can render to another. It is a way of loving your neighbor as yourself. You recognize your own and your neighbor's worth simultaneously. A miracle is a way we bring love to someone who believes in fear. And again, everything is reciprocal, right? It comes back. If I think someone is more worthy of God's love than I am, or less worthy of God's love than I am making myself into either a victim. I am a victim if I claim that someone has hurt me. I'm a victimizer if I demean, condemn, or hurt someone. There's a very interesting line in the Course which says you cannot project and not hurt yourself. All right? You cannot be angry with someone and not hurt yourself. All right. Pride cometh before the fall. Pride looks down, and when we look down from a great height, we get dizzy, and we can fall. Adam's selfishness was symbolized by the fall of mankind, humankind. The fall into sin is separation. Still nothing happened. We think of it as separation, but we can't actually be separated. That's why, in terms of the Course, returning to heaven, it's just a matter of welcome home. You never went anywhere. You were just dreaming this dream all along, and now you're awake. You never went anywhere. None of this ever happened. All right? We'll do a couple more and we'll take our break. It is easy to distinguish between grandeur from grandiosity because love is returned and pride is not. It's an interesting line from the Course. Pride will not produce miracles because pride is not shared. A miracle is something that we share, and the Course says God takes joy in sharing. It's the sharing that we really love, that we really want to be experiencing. Let's just do one more and we'll take our break. Miracles make minds one in God. They depend on cooperation because the sonship is the sum of all that God created. Miracles therefore reflect the laws of eternity. Again, there are certain laws. The laws of eternity, the laws of God, laws of the ego, which we will not be looking at. So we've been sitting for an hour. Let's take a break.